as was said on Sunday, someone came and asked the question, why do we need to know who we are and what we do? And it was answered to them, do you know those wandering sadhus? I think more accurately they're called masts, who wander around India unwashed, with matted hair and dishevelled clothing, muttering and mumbling to themselves. I said, that's what you're going to finish up like if you don't answer this question. So, the Dharma, the Tao, the will of God, the purpose of life, or as we seem to have come to perhaps another word for, because the others are abstractions, the law. And this question, who are you and what do you do? And they are synonymous, because we have to know one to know the other. There's a story that is somewhat of a poser for you, but let's see what it brings up for us relative to this question. There was a certain magistrate called Magistrate Li, who was an official in one of the provinces of the imperial realm. And it so happened that he was entertaining several generals from the imperial capital at a tea shop. And they got into some more personal discussions. And Magistrate Li happened to make the remark that the one big regret in his life at the age of 56 was that he had no son and heir to carry on his name. Well, then one of the lesser officials who was attending this little tea gathering said that he knew of a certain diviner, a soothsayer, a fortune teller who lived in this province that was said to be able very accurately to tell the future. So they all decided that they would go and make a consultation with this soothsayer. So the little group, Magistrate Li, the lesser officials, and the two generals went off to the soothsayer. And Magistrate Li, when he was asked a question of what it was that he was there for, said to the soothsayer, can you tell me if I'm ever going to have a son? The soothsayer got angry, and he said, what do you mean? You've already got a son. The magistrate said, no, I don't have a son. The soothsayer said, don't try to fool me. At the age of 40, you had a boy. Well, Magistrate Li was very perplexed, and he thought, and he then he suddenly remembered, oh yes, when I was 40, there was a slave girl in our household that became pregnant. But I was sent away on some business, and when I came back, my wife had already sold her. But there is no doubt that her child would be mine. Well, all of the others who were there witnessing this little exchange between the soothsayer were quite interested in this repartee that was going on. But then one of the generals piped up and said, well, you know, it so happened that about 15 years ago, I myself had no son, so I went to the marketplace to find myself a maid so that I could have an heir. as happenstance would have it, when I got there, the maid that I obtained was already pregnant. And when I went back to my house, I found that my wife was with child. And they both had sons within a matter of a month of one another. Could it be that this could be your son? Well, the general and Magistrate Li had a little discussion about the attributes of the slave girl, and they coincided. So they decided that perhaps this was his son. Well, the general said, I have to go back to my house in the capital, but you're welcome to come and claim your son. So Magistrate Li sent a message to the emperor of this little story, and the emperor was totally captured by it. So he sent his own official carriage, gave Magistrate Li permission to go use this carriage, all costs paid, to go and see if this was his son. So Magistrate Li, in the company of his wife, who at another time was an old shrew and very jealous, but because she hadn't been able to provide an heir, had become very mellowed and humble. So she went with her husband, Magistrate Li, in the carriage to the capital, and they were greeted by the general with a great reception. And then the two boys were brought out, put in front of Magistrate Li, and they were both dressed alike, even though it was obvious that they were both of very different character. They were both dressed the same. So Magistrate Li said to the general, give me some details here. General said, no. You must choose your son yourself. So Magistrate Li pondered for a moment, observing the two boys. And then suddenly he went over to one of them and embraced him and said, "This is my son." The general said, "And so it is." So Magistrate Li and the boy wept in each other's arms, and they returned to their home, and as Magistrate Li had always hoped,